Now let's continue our conversation on Transparency International's report on Nigeria. I'm now being joined on the news at 10 by the Chairman, Presidential Advisory Committee on Corruption, Professor Ishe Sagay. Thanks a lot, Professor, for joining us on the news at 10. Now, the representative of Transparency International in Nigeria, that's Mr. Rafsanjani, he talked about some of the reasons that for this drop in the index. He spoke about selective prosecution, an attack on whistleblowers, etc. How do you see it?
Well, I want to start by asking a more profound question, and that is, who made Transparency International a judge of integrity and transparency all over the world, or particularly in Nigeria? They are just a self-appointed body. And what do they base their work on? On perception. What is perception? That's what somebody thinks. That is not reality. So whose perception are you talking about? Perception of those who have no access to easy money anymore since 2015? Or is it the perception of those who have no access to subsidy, petrol subsidy fraud? Or is it those who don't have a number of 10, 15 BVNs in the banks anymore? And all the other people, those who are compelled to use TSA instead of hiding money in banks all over the place. So that is the question. Whose perception? It cannot be the perception of the ordinary man who has voted this government back into power with 5 million votes, far above that of 2015. So whose perception? So I think the whole exercise is irrelevant.
Well, in terms of, I mean, that's what you're saying in terms of their perception. But even if you look in the country here, a number of lawyers, a number of human rights activists have been talking about what they claim to be the selective fights, etc. Even though we do hear the acting chairman of the EFCC say that this fight against corruption has renewed vigor. Is there something that we are leaving out? Is there something they're leaving out that's making the rest of the world see it as though this fight is not being fought as we think it is?
No, I don't see the rest of the world seeing it that way. I mean, the continent has appointed the president champion of anti-corruption in Africa. That is what the rest of the world is saying. This, the fight against corruption has been acknowledged everywhere in the world, except by some elites in Nigeria who are beneficiaries of corruption. And that's the whole problem. Nobody is talking of the asset recoveries, well over $1 trillion within the country. Nobody is talking about the whistleblower plan that was introduced by this government, which has been very successful. Nobody is talking of convictions for corruption, which have gone up more than 500%, about 2,000 convictions in the last 4 years. There's so many things, so many positive aspects of this fight against corruption. And the Amnesty Transparency International thinks it can just bulldoze its way into our society and dictate to us what they have observed by perception. Why don't they go to the anti-corruption agencies, ICPC, EFCC, go through their records, see what they have achieved, and compile that and use that as a basis of the assessment, rather than going to ask disgruntled people in the streets of Nigeria what they perceive as a record or success of the anti-corruption war. So, I mean, I think the whole exercise is useless and should be disregarded.
Okay, so, Prof, I hear what you say about how you feel about their ranking. What would be your own ranking of Nigeria, looking at the country in the last 2 years, even with the issues that we've had among Nigerians, not just transparency? If you were to rank Nigeria on the index, what number would you put us?
Well, I don't have the achievements of other countries, but this is what I can say. As far as the fight against corruption is concerned, there has been a great leap forward. No question about that in the last 4 years. A great leap forward. The whole fight has been transformed. There's a government that is committed, that has the will to fight it. We have agencies that are fighting it successfully, wrestling it to the ground, sending people to prison, taking stolen property away from them, using the process of that stolen property in social investment for the most vulnerable Nigerians. So in terms of considering Nigeria per se, between 2014 and now, there has been a great leap forward. There's no question about that. But where we can place Nigeria in the rest of the world, I don't know. But if we go by the successes we have achieved, I think we have done much, much better than Transparency International wants the world to believe. And my view is that this government should no longer recognize Transparency International. They were not appointed, they are self-appointed. They should just be disregarded. They are just Confucianists.
All right, Chairman, Presidential Advisory Committee on Corruption, Professor Sagay. Thanks for joining us on the news at 10 tonight and talking about that. Thank you.